You're always ready, Dan. Dr. Dan. Okay.
What was the phone number again?
What? Send it. Did he hang up?
No,
I got you.
Jeez.
Here we go.
Wasn't that bad, was it?
You know, us guys from Washington, we don't work. I was done. Spent.
Spartans! Lay down your weapons! Persians! Come and get them!
Hey folks, Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show. Welcome back to this show. This is one of our series on improving your rifle, your hunting rifle, your long-range rifle, some of the things we've been talking about. Well, this show, we're talking about optics, and I've got Mark Boardman, the marketing director of Vortex Optics, on the show with me, as he has been this entire show. We talked about entry-level scopes in the last segment, well, mounting systems and entry-level scopes in the last segment, but he brought up a few things. Number one, he brought up first focal plane, second focal plane. We talked about that. The second one is if you have a scope that has adjustable turrets, has adjustable turrets, I have found, and he mentioned the same thing, that a windage turret is better if it's capped. If you don't have a cap or a lock on it, get some electrician's tape and tape that sucker down. I've had too many times where I've been out on a competition, like when we're shooting at Avenal, and you move from station to station with your gun in a backpack, or at the Vortex Extreme Challenge, which I've been on a few times, which has been a great thing. But unbeknownst to you, if you don't check everything before you shoot, you could be 4 minutes off, right, left, on that windage turret. You don't look at it. You're dialing, you're looking at your vertical, and if you're not competent, like me, meaning I'm the one who's not competent, you can make these shots where you're off 4 minutes right, 4 minutes left, and you're like, what the heck was that? Fortunately, it's shooting against steel, and it's not a big deal, just a miss. But capping or taping off that windage turret, I think, is a great idea, because if you need to dial in 10 minutes of wind on a hunting shot, you shouldn't be shooting.
Yeah, it's definitely something, if your turrets, aren't capped or, don't have a locker, one nice thing is just to be able to have, either a shim system or a zero stop there where it's going to come back home. And, but yeah, you want to be mindful of it. You definitely want to be mindful of that. And
yeah, you have more moving parts than... Yeah, these scopes have more features, more moving parts, more things to be mindful of than the old Weaver 1-inch 4-power that came on your dad's rifle. Okay, there's great features, but it takes a level of competency and practice to run them.
Yep. And one thing to bring up with that too, when you talk about dialing, just because of scope, one thing that we put a premium on with our lineup is that our scopes track true.
Right.
We are very, cognizant that is not an option they don't, right?
So explain what tracking is, Mark.
So, it just means, I'd say a lot of our scopes, are going to track, quarter MOA or with a 10th mil click, depending on, what it's, supposed to do or what that scope is configured in. But, if it needs to, if it's a quarter MOA click, it better be moving a quarter MOA, and that's, top, essentially top to bottom, so when you want to make an adjustment, you're making a very accurate adjustment.
So what he's talking about is on the top turret, or the side turret, there's clicks, and these clicks have a predetermined size that they should move your crosshairs when you're shooting at 100 yards, or in any distance. It's measured in MOAs or MRADs, but two different measuring systems for another day. But on if it's supposed to be 1/4 inch clicks, so if I move it 4 times, I should have moved my bullet impact 1 inch, whichever direction I've chosen, at 100 yards. So that's roughly the way that works. And if it doesn't match that, if one click is actually 3/8 of an inch instead of 1/4 of an inch, now I'm shooting 2 inches high at 100 when I meant to shoot 1 inch high at 100, which is, for downrange, is disastrous. The second thing is consistency of the tracking devices. So if it's moving if I'm doing what's called a box test, say I'm dead on at 0, and then I click up 6 minutes and I shoot a group, and I click right 6 minutes and I shoot a group, and click down 6 minutes and shoot a group, and click left 6 minutes and shoot a group, I should have 4 groups exactly, 6 inches apart at 100 yards if my tracking was true, and come back to my main 0. And that's something that Vortex is, like you said, you're a slave on that. You make sure that you're doing everything you can for that consistency, because you have to find your 0 again, or the whole thing was useless exercise.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and I guess other place I was going there is just because a scope may not have exposed turrets that are maybe a little bit more purpose built for dialing and executing those long range shots. It doesn't mean you can't go through the process of getting that ballistic data and dialing that turret even if you have a capped turret on there, depending on the hunt or the scenario, that may be the way you want to go. Case in point, I was hunting Kodiak with my brother. I knew it was going to be a rugged hunt. I knew we were going to be going up and down stuff, and I actually ran a Viper HS 4-16 with capped turrets on that hunt, just because I didn't want to have to think about, having, not that I thought there would be an issue there, like for whatever reason I just felt more comfortable having capped turret. Actually now that I think about it, because my brother, he ran a Viper HSLR with the, obviously the uncapped version, and we both had a very successful hunt. But I guess my thought was I still went through the process of getting that ballistic data, and if I needed to execute a longer range shot, I certainly could have.
So here's what your thought was on that. When the brush breaks at 20 yards in front of you, and that freaking 11-foot Kodiak starts coming, you don't want to worry about your scope. On Kodiak Island. Was that kind of the way it was? It's like, the last thing I want to worry about is my scope. And so that was probably part of your idea on that island for having a capped turret.
Yeah, I think it was, I think probably just a slightly sleeker setup, and I guess I wasn't really anticipating a long-range shot either, so, which, I think the longest shot we took on that hunt was, 200 yards. My brother, executed his shot at 75 yards. Of course, he had the LR version on there, so he really used it in that scenario. But, so yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things where I just, was like, I kind of catered the scope to what I was anticipating encountering.
It makes sense. The other thing, you didn't bring this up yet, but on the EBR. The EBR reticle has multiple hashtags. So this is the part inside your scope, folks, which is also very, very important. Some of them have useless information. I've seen some that have so much information you can't see the target. Others are bare bones, and so it's important to figure out what's going to fly for you. For instance, I have a Diamondback on my Ruger number 1. I did that because it was a good scope in a 1-inch, which is what the rings demanded for a Ruger number 1, and it has the BDC reticle. So inside that, I've got three different hash marks in there that respond to a different distance for shooting, but that can be a way to make a quick 300 or 400 yard shot if you have to. It's not precise for 733 yards, but at 400 yards you can hold pretty well with something like that and not have to worry about dialing. And so your EBR reticle, I think, should be something that everybody would want in their hunting scope, or especially if you're shooting long range or PRS or something like that. It's a great reticle for that. Just a plain set of crosshairs doesn't give you much information to shoot from if you're going to use it as a tool.
Yeah. I mean, you can, standard BDC, you can definitely do quite a bit with it. As you mentioned, it's not going to be that pinpoint accuracy. Those subtensions are, fall around, a more general ballistics curve. But you can get them as accurate as you want. We always recommend a person goes out to the range and sees, essentially, range certifies where those drops are hitting for the cartridge, that they're running, for the bullet that they're, pushing through that specific rifle. And you'll find, it's like, maybe my, 300-yard drop is actually dead on at 320, or maybe it's dead on at 190 or something like that. Or I shouldn't say not 190, at 290, I should have said. But, you know, I mean, so, but you're going to be pretty darn close, you know, and that's a second focal plane optical system. So in general, when you want to use those drops, a person needs to remember that they're going to want to have their magnification maxed out. Like I say, that's in general, because there are a couple rifle scopes in our lineup where that's not the case. And
Right.
those,
18 instead of 24
conventions
power.
are gonna,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is,
wherever that spot is, turn to that and let it rip.
The other thing is you can use it to verify at 100 yards. You simply use each of those hash marks as your aiming point on the same target. Measure how high it actually hits at 100 yards. Then you can go back with your ballistic calculator and a chronograph if you have it, and say, okay, if it's 4.5 inches high at 100 yards, that's a 400-yard zero. You know, so that would be my 400-yard mark, or 440, whatever it happens to be. You can back into that. That will give you an idea when you try and verify out there at certified yardages, which, you know, where you really are. Are you at 440 or are you at 490? So that's an easy way to get into the ballpark. Folks, Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show with Mark Boardman from Vortex Optics. We'll be right back after this.